The Galactic Trade Summit was supposed to be a showcase of unity, but beneath its glittering surface, tension simmered like a ticking time bomb. Delegates from over 100 species gathered under the glittering dome of the Arcturus station, a marvel of engineering floating amidst a tranquil nebula. For decades, the summit had symbolized peace and collaboration. But this year it would be remembered for something else entirely. Amidst the grand chambers filled with holographic displays and diplomats dressed in their species' finest regalia, a human stood alone at the heart of the turmoil. Lieutenant Commander Aaron Hayes was a decorated officer, a representative of Earth's growing prominence in the galactic concord. His presence here was meant to solidify humanity's role in interstellar politics. Instead, his name would echo as the spark that ignited a fire across the galaxy. The room had been tense all day. Whispers of unrest and brewing conflicts rippled through the air, barely concealed behind polite formalities. The Rither Dominion, a militaristic regime infamous for its disdain of newer Concord members like humanity, had been especially vocal. Their delegation sat rigidly in their seats, their sharp scales glinting under the station's artificial sunlight. Hayes, ever the diplomat despite his military background, moved between groups with ease. His charm and sharp intellect earned him respect from many species, though it was clear the Rither viewed him with barely concealed contempt. "Commander Hayes," hissed WOXX, the Rither's ambassador. His elongated frame towered over the human, his voice dripping with disdain. "Your species' rapid rise in the Concord is unprecedented. Tell me, how does it feel to stand among beings so clearly your superior?" Hayes smiled, his calm unshaken. "Ambassador WRYXX, humanity measures superiority differently. We focus on resilience, innovation, and cooperation. Traits that have served us well." WRYXX's pupils narrowed. Resilience? An amusing choice of words for such fragile creatures. The conversation ended as the Chancellor began the proceedings, but the tension lingered. Hours later, as the summit broke for recess, chaos erupted. A sharp cry echoed through the halls, followed by the unmistakable sound of a plasma weapon discharging. Delegates scattered, their cries blending with the sharp clang of chairs overturning and the high-pitched whine of security alarms. The flicker of emergency lights painted the scene in chaotic reds and blues, as panic spread like wildfire. By the time the security forces arrived, it was too late. Lieutenant Commander Hayes lay lifeless on the polished floor, his blood staining the pristine surface. Standing over him, a Rither guard held a weapon, his expression unreadable. He dropped the gun as he was apprehended, but the damage had been done. The news spread faster than light. Within hours, every Concord channel was flooded with reports of the assassination. The Rither Dominion's leaders disavowed the act, calling it the work of a rogue element. Their disavowal lacked credibility, as the Rither Guard had gained access to a restricted area and used a weapon only issued to high-ranking officials, details that hinted at deeper involvement. They promised full cooperation in the investigation, but their words rang hollow. The human delegation demanded answers, their voices sharp with grief and fury. Back on Earth, the reaction was immediate and visceral. In sprawling city squares and quiet rural towns alike, millions gathered, their faces illuminated by holographic projections of Hayes' image. The somber tones of memorial hymns echoed through the air, mingling with the flicker of candles held in trembling hands. On the walls of towering skyscrapers, massive digital displays projected tributes, showing Hayes' brave smile alongside the words, "A hero lost but not forgotten." In the heart of New Geneva, the capital of Earth's interstellar government, President Elena Torres stood before a sea of citizens. Her voice carried the weight of their collective grief and determination. "Lieutenant Commander Hayes represented the best of us," she said, her tone resolute. "His death is not just a loss for Earth, but a challenge to all who value unity and peace. Justice will not only be served, it will remind the galaxy of what humanity stands for." Her words echoed across Earth and its colonies, igniting a fire in every heart. But behind the scenes, Torres and her advisors knew this was not just a matter of justice. The Rither Dominion's actions, whether sanctioned or not, had crossed a line. Humanity's response had to be decisive. In the shadowed halls of the Concord Security Council, tensions reached a boiling point. Representatives from the core species debated endlessly, their voices raised in frustration. "This act cannot go unanswered," declared Minister Takra of the Zelthan Union. "The Concord's credibility depends on swift and decisive action." WRYXX, ever defiant, lashed out. "The actions of one rogue guard cannot condemn an entire dominion." To suggest otherwise is reckless. Ambassador Eliza Cole, head of Earth's delegation, leaned forward, her gaze unflinching. And yet it was a Rither weapon, wielded by a Rither soldier, against a Concord diplomat. That is not the action of a rogue element, it's an attack on the very foundation of this alliance. The council erupted in chaos once more, but Cole's words carried weight. The Concord was built on mutual respect and cooperation. An attack on one of its members, especially one as visible as this, threatened its very stability. Behind closed doors, humanity prepared for every possibility. Earth's fleet, though smaller than some of the older species' armadas, was a testament to human ingenuity. Modular ships bristling with advanced technology stood ready in orbital docks. Special forces trained relentlessly, their resolve hardened by the tragedy. In a classified briefing room, President Torres met with her top military and diplomatic advisors. Holographic maps displayed the Rither Dominion's territory, key installations marked in glowing red. "We're not here to start a war," Torres said, her voice firm. "But we must be prepared to defend ourselves. The Rither must understand that their actions have consequences." General Marcus Hale, commander of Earth's Defense Force, nodded. "The fleet is on high alert. If they so much as move against us, we'll be ready." Cole, ever the diplomat, interjected. "We need to tread carefully. The Rither are provocateurs, but they're not foolish. An escalation could fracture the Concord. We need to isolate them diplomatically before considering military action." Torres sighed, the weight of her responsibility pressing heavily on her shoulders. "Then we do both. Prepare the fleet but let diplomacy lead. The Rither need to know that humanity is not a target without consequence." As humanity mourned and the Concord debated, the Rither Dominion faced a crisis of their own. Internal factions clashed, some advocating for reconciliation while others doubled down on their disdain for Earth. The guard responsible for Hayes' assassination was interrogated, his motives unclear. Was he truly a rogue actor, or had he acted on orders from higher up? The truth remained elusive. Unbeknownst to the Rither leadership, humanity had already begun gathering intelligence. Operatives risked exposure by infiltrating heavily secured Rither networks, their every move cloaked in advanced counter-surveillance measures. The stakes were immense, as even the smallest slip could escalate tensions into open conflict, but the fragments they uncovered hinted at a conspiracy deeper than anyone had anticipated. Back on Arcturo's station, the summit resumed under heavy security. The Rither delegation, now a pariah among the Concord, found themselves isolated. Their once intimidating presence was met with cold stares and whispered accusations. Cole, ever the strategist, seized the opportunity. She moved through the halls of the station, forging alliances and strengthening humanity's position. Every conversation, every handshake, was a step toward ensuring that the tragedy of Hayes' death would not be in vain. In one such meeting, Takra of the Zelthan Union voiced what many were thinking. "Earth's response has been measured but firm. It's a balance that some of us could learn from. You've shown strength without recklessness." Cole's smile was faint but genuine. "Humanity has faced its share of storms, Minister. We've learned that true strength lies in knowing when to act, and when to wait." As the summit drew to a close, the stage was set for humanity's next move. The galaxy watched with bated breath, unsure of what Earth's response would entail. But one thing was certain: the death of Lieutenant Commander Hayes had united humanity like never before, and their resolve would shake the stars. The air aboard the stealth frigate Resolute was thick with anticipation as it approached the edge of Rither Dominion space. Humanity's response had moved beyond diplomatic debates and memorial speeches. It was now a calculated mission to uncover the truth and, if necessary, deliver justice. At the helm of this covert operation was Commander Eliza Cole, who had traded her diplomatic garb for tactical armor. Her calm demeanor belied the tension rippling through the crew. "Commander, we're approaching the target system," reported Lieutenant Malik, his voice steady despite the stakes. The bridge of the Resolute was dimly lit, its screens glowing with tactical overlays of the Rither stronghold ahead. "Good," Cole replied. "Maintain stealth protocols. We're here to gather intelligence, not start a war." The target was a remote Rither communications hub, a facility believed to be the nexus of encrypted transmissions linked to the conspiracy. If the Rither Dominion had sanctioned Hayes' assassination, this would be the place to find evidence. And if it truly was the work of a rogue faction, the hub would reveal their plans. As the frigate slipped into position, a small strike team assembled in the deployment bay. Cole addressed them, her voice firm but measured. "We don't know exactly what we'll find in there," she began. "But make no mistake, This mission is critical. We're not just looking for proof. Failure here could fracture the Concorde itself and leave humanity isolated against powerful enemies. We're looking to ensure the safety of every member of the Concorde. Stay sharp, stay focused, and remember, this isn't just about haze. This is about sending a message that humanity won't be silenced. The team nodded, their expressions a mix of determination and nervous energy. Among them was Sergeant Kara Min, a seasoned operative who had seen her share of dangerous missions. She adjusted her visor and muttered, "Let's hope the Rither aren't expecting company." Cole glanced at her. "That's why we have stealth tech. Let's move." The team infiltrated the facility with practiced precision. The corridors of the communications hub were sterile and dimly lit, their silence broken only by the hum of machinery and the occasional faint echo of indistinct chatter, as if voices lingered just out of sight. Using advanced cloaking devices, the operatives evaded patrols, their movements swift and deliberate. Sergeant Min led the way, her scanner displaying the layout of the hub. "Command center is 3 levels down," she whispered. "Looks like heavy encryption on their systems. Then we'll make sure Vance earns her paycheck," Cole quipped, referring to Dr. Lila Vance, who was monitoring the mission remotely from the Resolute. "Let's keep moving." The tension was palpable as they descended deeper into the facility. The further they went, the more they encountered signs of activity. Rither guards patrolling in tight formations and encrypted terminals glowing with ominous red light. But the team's training held, and they moved undetected. Finally they reached the command center. Min bypassed the security lock with a device that emitted a soft hum, and the door slid open to reveal a room bathed in holographic projections. Streams of alien data spiraled around the walls in intricate patterns, glowing in hues of blue and violet. The central console pulsed with energy, its translucent surface displaying shifting schematics and indecipherable symbols, as if alive with its own intelligence. Streams of data flowed across the walls, while a central console pulsed with energy. Cole signaled to Min and 2 others to cover the entrances. "Vance, we're in," she said into her communicator. "Begin the download." Back aboard the Resolute, Vance worked her magic, remotely interfacing with the hub's systems. Her fingers flew across her console, sweat beading on her brow. "Decrypting now. This system is sophisticated. Give me a minute." "You've got 30 seconds, Cole replied, her eyes scanning the room. Her instincts told her they were running out of time. The first sign of trouble came from Min. "Movement," she hissed, her weapon trained on the corridor outside. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed faintly. Cole's voice was calm but commanding. "Hold position. We don't engage unless necessary." The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the faint metallic clink of armor. A patrol was heading straight for them. "Vance status?" Cole pressed. "Almost there." "Got it?" Vance exclaimed. "Data is secure. Get out of there." "Move," Cole ordered. The team slipped out of the command center just as the patrol rounded the corner. The cloaking tech held, but it wouldn't fool the guards for long. The escape was a tense series of close calls. At one point, Min had to disable a motion sensor while the team crouched in the shadows, holding their breaths as a Rither guard passed within inches. But finally they reached the extraction point. The Resolute's stealth shuttle swooped in, its engines barely audible. The team boarded in seconds, and the shuttle sped back to the frigate. On board the Resolute, Cole and her team gathered in the briefing room as Vance decrypted the stolen data. The tension was thick as the first fragments of information appeared on the screen. "What are we looking at?" Min asked, her voice low. Vance's eyes widened as she read the data. This isn't just about haze." Vance's voice trembled slightly as she processed the gravity of the data. The transmissions detail plans to destabilize the Concorde itself. Assassinations, sabotage, even full-scale military provocations. She glanced at Cole, her eyes wide with alarm. "This is bigger than anything we imagined. If they pull this off, the Concorde could collapse." The team exchanged tense looks, the weight of their discovery pressing down on them like a physical force. "And it's not just the Rither Dominion, it's a coalition of factions?" Cole's jaw tightened. "A coalition? Who else is involved?" Vance shook her head. "Still decrypting, but the Rither are just one piece of the puzzle. Whoever's behind this has been planning it for years." The room fell silent as the weight of the revelation sank in. Min broke the silence. "So what do we do now?" Cole's eyes burned with resolve. "We take this to the Concorde. The galaxy needs to see this, and we need to act before it's too late." The Resolute's journey back to Concorde space was tense. The crew knew the stakes had grown exponentially. What had started as a mission to uncover the truth about Hayes' assassination had revealed a conspiracy that threatened the entire alliance. Cole stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the stars. "We're not just fighting for Hayes anymore," she said quietly to Min, who had joined her. "We're fighting for everything the Concord stands for. And we'll make them pay for what they've done," Min replied, her voice steel. The Resolute slipped into Concord space, carrying not just evidence but a call to arms. The galaxy would soon know the truth, and humanity would ensure that the conspirators faced the consequences. The Concord Council chamber buzzed with an undercurrent of tension as the Resolute's crew prepared to present their findings. A low hum from holographic displays punctuated the room, mingling with the murmur of whispered conversations among the delegates. The stakes had never been higher. Delegates from every member species filled the chamber, their faces reflecting a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and unease. Above the council floor, the holographic emblems of the Concord glowed faintly, a symbol of unity that now seemed fragile. Commander Eliza Cole stood at the center of the chamber, her uniform crisp, her expression resolute. Behind her, holographic projections of intercepted Rither transmissions flickered in the air, displaying damning evidence of the coalition's plans. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on her, but she showed no sign of faltering. The High Chancellor's luminous form hovered above the assembly, its multitonal voice resonating through the chamber. "Commander Cole, you may proceed." Cole took a deep breath and began. "Honored delegates, what we present today is not just evidence of an attack on humanity but an attack on the Concord itself. Lieutenant Commander Hayes' assassination was not an isolated incident. It was part of a coordinated effort by a coalition seeking to destabilize our alliance and exploit the chaos for their own gain." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Cole gestured to the projections, which now displayed a series of intercepted communications. Vance's voice narrated over the visuals. These transmissions detail planned provocations across multiple systems, sabotage of key infrastructure which could cripple essential trade and supply routes, assassination of Concord leaders, aiming to decapitate our political unity, and incitement of conflicts between member species, fostering mistrust and division that could fracture the alliance beyond repair. The Rither Dominion is a key player, but they are not alone. Our analysis reveals participation from at least 3 other factions, each with their own motives but united by a shared goal, to fracture the Concord. Gasps rippled through the room. Vrath, the Rither delegate, shot to his feet, his claws flexing and his scales glinting under the chamber's lights, his voice sharp and defensive. "This is preposterous. The Rither Dominion categorically denies any involvement in such a conspiracy. These so-called transmissions are nothing but fabrications." Cole held his gaze, unflinching. "The data does not lie, Ambassador Vrath. The encrypted markers on these transmissions are uniquely Rither, and the timing of these messages aligns perfectly with recent events. If the Dominion wishes to clear its name, it would do well to cooperate fully with this investigation." The High Chancellor raised a glowing appendage, signaling for calm. "Ambassador Vrath, you will have the opportunity to respond in due course. Commander Cole, please continue." Cole nodded and resumed. "The coalition's strategy relies on secrecy and the assumption that we, as a unified body, are too fragmented to respond. But humanity's resolve has uncovered their plot, and we believe that together the Concord can overcome this threat. However, we must act decisively. Delaying action will only embolden our enemies." As the session adjourned, the council chamber buzzed with debate. Cole retreated to a side room with her team, where they reviewed the delegates' reactions. "Not everyone's convinced," Vance remarked, her tone tinged with frustration. "Vratha's denial will sway some of the more cautious factions." Lieutenant Malik leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. "Let them deny it. The evidence speaks for itself. They can't ignore what's right in front of them." Cole tapped a console, bringing up a list of key delegates. "We need to ensure the undecided factions see the stakes clearly. Min, I want you and Vance to prepare a detailed analysis of the coalition's potential impact on their systems. Show them what happens if the Concord fractures." Min nodded. "Understood. Fear is a powerful motivator." "Fear alone won't be enough," Cole replied. "We need unity. If we can rally the central factions, the rest will follow." The following day, Cole began a whirlwind series of private meetings with influential delegates. In the dimly lit halls of the Concord's diplomatic wing, she met with Takra of the Zelthan Union, whose support would be critical. "Commander," Takra began, her iridescent scales shimmering in the low light, "your findings are troubling, but some of my colleagues worry that humanity's response may provoke further instability." Cole nodded, choosing her words carefully. I understand their concerns, Minister Takra. But inaction carries its own risks. The coalition's plans are already in motion. If we hesitate, they will strike first and the Concord will pay the price. Takra's mandibles clicked thoughtfully, a subtle rhythm betraying her internal conflict. You speak with conviction, Commander. Conviction is persuasive, but evidence is irrefutable. My people value stability above all else, and this situation threatens to unravel it. I must tread carefully in choosing a side. Show me how this impacts my people directly. Cole activated her datapad, projecting a detailed map of Zelthan space. The coalition has identified your trade routes as critical targets. Sabotaging these routes would cripple your economy and destabilize your colonies. These are not hypothetical risks. They are outlined in the transmissions we intercepted. Takra studied the map, her expression unreadable. After a moment she spoke. You have my support, Commander. But you must tread carefully. If the Concord fractures under your leadership, humanity will bear the blame. Cole inclined her head. Thank you, Minister. I won't let that happen. By the end of the day, Cole's efforts began to yield results. Key factions, including the Zelthan Union and the Orthan Confederacy, publicly declared their support for immediate action. But the Rither delegation, backed by a handful of skeptical allies, continued to obstruct progress. In the shadows of the council chamber, Vrath met with his advisors, his voice low and venomous. Humanity seeks to paint us as villains. They underestimate our resolve. If they push too hard, they may find themselves regretting it. Unbeknownst to Vrath, his words were being monitored. Min, hidden in a concealed surveillance station, transmitted the recording to Cole. That's the leverage we need, Cole said, a faint smile playing on her lips. Let the council hear their true intentions. It's time to turn the tide. The next council session was explosive. Cole played the recording of Vratha's private conversation, his venomous words echoing through the chamber. Gasps rippled through the delegates, followed by an eruption of outraged whispers and indignant exclamations. Some pounded their desks in anger, while others turned accusing gazes toward the Rither delegation, their voices rising in a chorus of condemnation. Delegates erupted in outrage, their voices a cacophony of condemnation. The High Chancellor's tone was firm. Ambassador Vrath, this council demands an explanation for these remarks. Vratha's composure cracked, his claws flexing nervously. This recording is taken out of context. It proves nothing. It proves everything, Cole countered. The Rither Dominion has no intention of cooperating with this investigation. Their obstructionism only confirms their complicity. As the session concluded, the tide had definitively turned. The majority of delegates now backed Cole's proposal for a united Concord response. Humanity's determination had not only exposed the coalition but galvanized the alliance into action. As Cole and her team left the chamber, Malik grinned. Well, Commander, I'd say that went better than expected. Cole allowed herself a small smile. We're not done yet. But this was a victory. And it's only the beginning. The following days passed in a blur of strategy and diplomacy. With the Concord now united under a shared understanding of the threat facing them, Commander Eliza Cole found herself caught between the momentum of a growing coalition and the looming uncertainty of what would happen next. The meeting in the council chamber had been a turning point, but the war for unity was far from over. The Rither delegation, though cornered, had not given up. Vratha's words, recorded for the council to hear, had ignited fury, but the Dominion was not one to retreat easily. Their continued obstruction had forced Cole and her team to reconsider their next move. But they couldn't afford to wait much longer. The coalition's plan was still in motion and time was running out. The command center aboard the Resolute hummed with activity as Cole stood before the large view screen, displaying the latest intelligence on coalition movements. Lieutenant Commander Vance had spent hours analyzing the data, piecing together the plans for the next phase of the assault. The Dominion, along with its clandestine allies, had already begun targeting crucial supply routes across several Concord member states. If the factions did not act swiftly, the damage could be irreversible. Commander, we have confirmation, Vance said, tapping on the console. The Rither are already moving forces to disrupt the Varathian-Talcor trade lane. If they succeed, it could leave the Varathians vulnerable to the coalition's next move. Cole's gaze sharpened as she scanned the map. The Varathians can't hold their own without that trade lane. We need to move before they're cut off completely. We can't afford to just react, Vance replied, a hint of frustration in her voice. We need to strike first. If we give them the initiative, we risk losing control of the entire situation. Cole crossed her arms, her mind racing. Agreed. We'll need the support of the Orthan Confederacy and the Zelthan Union. I'll need to meet with their representatives to ensure their cooperation in a joint counterstrike. Lieutenant Malik, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. I'll go. You've already done the heavy lifting. Let me handle the negotiations while you focus on command. Cole hesitated for a moment but nodded. Very well. But be clear, Malik, this will require more than just diplomacy. We're talking about immediate action. They need to be ready to move. Malik grinned, his confidence unmistakable. Don't worry, Commander. We'll have them on our side and we'll have them ready for action. The next day, Cole met with the key military leaders of the Orthan Confederacy and Zelthan Union. In a secure conference room aboard the Resolute, she faced Takra once more, alongside General Torin of the Orthan forces, a towering figure with furrowed brows and sharp eyes that betrayed a deep skepticism. Commander, we understand the urgency of the situation, Takra said, her voice smooth but tinged with caution. However, the Zelthan Union cannot risk involvement in an open confrontation with the Rither without further assurances. Our forces are already stretched thin. I'm aware of your position, Minister, Cole replied, her tone unwavering. But this is no longer a matter of choice. The coalition is moving and they're targeting more than just your trade routes. They're targeting your sovereignty, your very independence. If we don't act now, there won't be anything left to protect. General Torin grunted in agreement. You make a convincing case, Commander. But the Orthan Confederacy is not known for impulsive decisions. What guarantees do we have that humanity will uphold its end of the bargain once this is over? Cole met his gaze with steady resolve. The Concord's unity will depend on us all. This is not just about humanity's interests, it's about the survival of the Concord itself. We stand together or we fall apart. I'm not asking for blind trust. I'm asking for your commitment to our collective future. Torin studied her for a long moment before nodding. You have our commitment, Commander. But we expect you to lead with honor, and to ensure that humanity's interests do not come at the expense of the rest of us. Takra nodded as well. The Zelthan Union will support you, Commander. We cannot allow the Rither or their allies to succeed. With the Varathian Talcor trade lane secured and the joint task force formed, the stage was set for the next critical move. But as Cole returned to the Resolute, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. They had the alliances, they had the evidence, but there was an undercurrent of doubt that still lingered. As she sat in her command chair, her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, sharp ping on the communications console. Commander Cole, the voice of Admiral West, the commander of the Concord fleet, crackled through. We have an unexpected development. The Rither have begun mobilizing a fleet to the Talcor system. It's larger than we anticipated. Cole's stomach sank. What are their intentions? West's voice was grim. We believe they're preparing for a full-scale engagement. We'll need to act immediately to prevent them from taking control of the system. Cole's gaze hardened as she made the decision. Prepare the fleet. We're not waiting for them to make the first move. The time for hesitation is over. As the Resolute and its allies surged into position, the tension in the air was palpable. The Rither fleet loomed like a storm, its warships forming a jagged line around the Talcor system. It was clear that the coalition had miscalculated. They thought the Concord would fracture under the pressure, that humanity's response would be slow and indecisive. But they had underestimated Eliza Cole, and the unity she had forged. The battle was imminent. But in that moment, Cole knew that the true fight was not just for the Talcor system, but for the future of the Concord itself. And in that fight she would not be alone.